why being vulnerable is actually alpha. Hi, my name is Luke Vu, PhD. I'm a clinical psychologist, mental health expert helping young men overcome digital addiction, depression, and anxiety. In this video, we're going to unpack the concept of being alpha and how unhelpful that concept is in actually learning how to process your emotions in a healthy way. Quick disclaimer, I'm not your psych. This isn't treatment, and if you need a psychologist, you should find a registered, qualified psych in your area. Am I too alpha for my own emotional good? There isn't a clear definition of what being alpha means, but conversationally, we tend to associate it with being on top of your game, such as being attractive, assertive, competitive, determined, goal-oriented, the list goes on. Naturally, this definition comes with a counterpart of being a beta male, who is unsuccessful, unattractive, submissive, conflict avoidant, unmotivated, and so on. The reality is that being alpha is an oversimplified and generally unhelpful concept, which many might argue is a toxic way to look at the world, especially when it comes to resolving interpersonal problems. From my point of view, the problem with being alpha is that it usually comes with some level of emotional illiteracy, because you don't know how to acknowledge or listen to your own emotions, otherwise known as being vulnerable. Vulnerability is being sensitive to your own and others' emotional needs, and being vulnerable is critical in improving yourself and your interpersonal relationships, an invaluable life skill. Which then begs the obvious question, does being vulnerable mean that I'm weak? Well, when people think of being vulnerable, they often associate that with experiencing a negative emotion and being impaired by it. So this is in complete contrast with being alpha, where you don't acknowledge your feelings so that nothing can hurt you. You might believe that experiencing negative emotions such as sadness, discouragement, anxiety, or shame impairs you from achieving your goals, and that's why you suppress them. For some, being affected by negative emotions is considered weak. To a degree, this belief might work for you because you push through difficult times and you completely compartmentalize them without ever returning to them. Simply put, the ability to acknowledge that something is difficult or painful doesn't make you weak. In fact, it's the opposite. When you go out of your way to deny your pain and avoid feeling your emotions, it often makes things worse in the long run. Think about the last time you drank yourself silly because of a breakup, or did something stupid because of an argument with your partner. No matter how thick we make our skin, there will always be moments where things just get through, because we're humans, not robots. Making a habit of putting up a wall makes us even more sensitive to stresses and triggers. Being comfortable with vulnerability will enable you to process negative emotions in a healthier manner, which is the opposite of being weak. Now that we've cleared that up, let's straighten some other things out. Boys don't cry. Why do some men commonly struggle with vulnerability? I think Boys Don't Cry is an artifact of values that previous generations wanted to instill in our sons. And as parents, we want our children to be emotionally resilient and persist in the face of setbacks. When a child falls off their bicycle and is experiencing pain and distress, a well-meaning parent might say, "Oh, big boys don't cry," because they are trying to reduce that child's distress. Now, that reaction can be well-intentioned, but it comes with enormous disadvantages. The child feels that their emotions are invalidated. The parent and child miss out on modeling more effective skills for when the child encounters those negative emotions again. And the lesson learned by the child might be to reject negative feelings completely and create an unhealthy habit. Rinse and repeat this habit for a whole range of impactful experiences. Your first breakup, your first exam failure, the first time you were let go from your job, and then you might have yourself an issue. That initial message of "I'm not supposed to cry or get upset when I'm hurt" as a child becomes some sort of variation of "tough men don't feel emotions, don't cry, drink hard, never negotiate, never compromise, never wear pink." And sometimes that gets attached to our identity. Suppressing and denying emotions can impair how you understand yourself and others, and it's disastrous in maintaining relationships. By no means does this occur exclusively in men. Girls are often taught to suppress distress and disagreement with similar psychological consequences. So to remedy this, let's reframe what it actually means to be vulnerable. If vulnerability was a superpower, what are some abilities that I would gain? You have emotions for a reason, and it's important to understand why and how to regulate it so that they work for you and not against you. Acknowledging your emotions will allow you to understand yourself better, which in turn will help you recognize your weaknesses, and it will help you strategize how to cope with those emotions better. It will also help you to effectively resolve the cause of those problems, and last but not least, connect with others more deeply. Now, these abilities manifest into knowing and truly being yourself. Being able to understand your own emotions will put you in a better vantage point to understand your own insecurities and imperfections. Now, being more aware of your emotions will also help you become a better communicator. Because not only are you aware and in control of your own emotions, you'll also become aware of other people's emotions. You know, this little thing called empathy. Effectively communicating your emotions in a respectful way and validating others' emotions is fundamental to bonding and conflict resolution. Imagine feeling supported, knowing someone truly understands and listens, and that you're part of an unbreakable team. When understanding of self and understanding of others combine, it will inevitably lead to better relationships. So vulnerability is good, but how do I know when it's okay to be vulnerable? For most situations in life, there is always a place for emotions, acknowledging and understanding them. Ultimately, we want to use the information that negative emotions are providing us so that we can better understand and resolve what is driving that emotion. So vulnerability is useful for significant setbacks, such as breakups, major failures, grief, or injuries. Allow yourself to experience your feelings, understand them, learn to support yourself and get support from others, and you're way more likely to work out a resolution. Vulnerability should also be embraced in maintaining healthy relationships by respectful communication and building trust. It's worth checking in with yourself and examining what you're feeling before you try to brush it off. The reason could be a toxic relationship, the soul-crushing job, or the friend that belittles you. However, if the mission objective is clear and time is running out, like in the finals of a championship game or in an exam, you might be better off focusing on the immediate task and delaying the processing of your emotions later. Another case where vulnerability should be deferred is if you're in an unhealthy relationship where being vulnerable or putting your trust in the wrong person might leave you at risk of being taken advantage of, and you might find yourself amplifying your own negative emotions. In the case of depression and anxiety, being vulnerable and putting excessive attention in your own thoughts can make you feel worse. This is when seeking a mental health professional is helpful, because there are skills that you can use to help you process and engage those emotions without getting stuck in a loop. So just to be clear, the solution is still embrace your emotions, but just doing it with the support of a professional to upgrade your vulnerability skill set. Remember that suppressing emotions and denying your own feelings is a short-term strategy. It only delays processing. And no, you can't just keep using this short-term strategy forever. So can I train myself to be more emotionally attuned? How? Well, you can increase the awareness of what you are feeling by journaling. Write down what you are feeling and the thoughts that drive the feeling. Reflect on why you're having this emotion and how it affects your behavior. How can you better regulate this emotion? And practice expressing your emotions to a supportive person in your life. Really listen when others express their feelings and thoughts. Validate when you hear your friends and partners' thoughts and feelings. And as a side note, sometimes when we start acknowledging our own emotions, we can start to feel a little overwhelmed. And this is especially true if you had a history of trauma or abuse, and this might bring up some very difficult emotions and memories. Take your time. It isn't a race. And should you need additional support, reach out to a mental health professional in your area. So for you alpha chads out there, make some room to be vulnerable and you'll find yourself and your relationships dramatically improve. Perhaps you'll find that being alpha is about showing strength through kindness to yourself and others. I really hope you found this useful. Don't forget to hit subscribe. I'm Luke Vu. Be kind, be you. Catch you next time.